So Planes is a digital product studio. We're just up the road from Rise, about 15 minutes away. And we started about 6 years ago, and for as long as we've been around, working with startups has sort of been our bread and butter, right? So we would have teams of product managers and designers and developers, and they would work as product teams for startup founders and small teams, trying to launch new products and get things off the ground, right? And while we were doing this and working with often founders and teams who had not necessarily been, in product for a long time, one of the things we really enjoyed doing, or we thought was really important, was instilling a sort of a product-led culture on these new teams, right? So we wanted to create a culture where the teams weren't afraid of experimentation to try and decide like what to launch or not to launch. We wanted to create a culture where the team was really focused on the user and the user problem at the same time as trying to grow a fantastic business, which is cool. And over the last 6 years, we've worked with lots of startups. Some of those have gone on to do wonderful things, which is lovely. But over the years, we also started working with larger businesses, right? More established businesses. And we found that having a really product-led culture is not just applicable to startups, right? And it's not just applicable to the big tech companies that we all know and love, maybe don't love. But it's also applicable to these, established businesses, legacy businesses, the businesses that are maybe like brick and mortar and they're trying to do something in digital, right? But as we started working more with these larger businesses, we found that the challenges that the product leaders or those teams were having, they're not exactly the same. Well, some of them are the same, but they're not all the same sort of challenges that you would have in a startup. While startups might be constrained by resources or capital, established businesses, they might not have those same constraints, but they might be constrained by culture, right? This sort of like embedded way of doing things, or creates this kind of like inertia to change or adopting new ways of working. So we wanted to understand this better, right? And we wanted to understand it better so that we could, do better work for the businesses that we were trying to serve. So we went ahead and did what all good product teams do, and we started to do a lot of research, right? So over the last 12 months, Planes has gone out and interviewed around 50 CPOs and heads of product at large legacy businesses. And we wanted to understand what does their product culture look like, and what are the common challenges that they might be experiencing. And we started to see some common threads, right? You see some similarities between them. And one of the big problems we found, one of the first problem really, was even the idea of product isn't necessarily well understood at large legacy businesses. And for those businesses that have a CPO, someone in the C-suite who is in charge of product, every single one of the 50 CPOs that we spoke to, they said that they need to spend a significant amount of time just being an advocate for product in their business, which is cool. You might think that's like part of their role, but if you're doing it to the degree that you're not actually spending any time really executing on product, that really kind of says something about the culture and the state of knowledge and the understanding of product in those larger businesses. The second common problem that we found was that many businesses don't really understand the role of experimentation, right? So they didn't know how to use experimentation to decide what on our backlog, what initiatives do we want to pour more money into, and what do we actually want to kill off, which is really the role of experimentation, right? And what this ended up doing, it was kind of one or two things. Businesses either found that they had lots of things on their backlog, which they just didn't know how to move. They didn't know how to start it because the business felt they just needed to invest a whole lot into actually bringing it to life or to making a proper business out of it, rather than just experimenting to see what worked and what didn't. On the other side of things, businesses would often just pour good money after bad, trying to grow ideas or initiatives which probably should never have seen the light of day, right? So these are two common problems that we found across many of the CPOs that we spoke to. And so we wanted to have this event today as one initiative of many that we're doing to try and explore some of these challenges with some product leaders and, of course, like the people in the room. So we are going to have 3 panels. Each panel is going to last for 30 minutes, and between each panel, there is going to be a 10-minute break where you can grab a refreshment, you can use the bathroom. The bathroom's down back, by the way. And After the panels finish up, which will be around 5:30. Hang on, there's a slide for this. You guys are in luck. There we go. What do you reckon? At about 5:30, there's going to be some food and drinks, so stick around. We've got the space until 7 p.m. If you do decide to leave, do not forget to grab a goodie bag, because those are always lovely. Before we jump into the first panel, I just want to get a bit of an idea of the people who we have in the audience. So if you are from a startup, say less than 50 people at your company, can I see hands in the air? Okay, and if you're at a scale up, say like 50 to 100 people at your company, and what about like established businesses? If you got like over 500 people in your company, like put your hand up. Okay, right on. It's a bit of a mix, which is cool. All right, I'm going to stop speaking now, and we're going to get right into the first panel. The first panel is going to be chaired by none other than CJ Daniel Neild, and he's the co-founder of Planes. And the topic is going to be on the different approaches to innovation. So very relevant to what we've just been speaking about. So I'm going to hand you over to CJ right now, and he's going to introduce the panel and the panelists. Thank you.
I know, yeah. Everyone's looking at you.
Yeah, I'm just going to
Cool. Good afternoon. This is quite weird, hearing my voice come back to me. It's lovely to see you all here today. We are talking about a subject which is very close to my heart, which is the step in the product process where we go from ideas and talking and opinions into actually launching something and getting something into someone's hands. So we test assumptions and opinions, and we see what we can actually learn by actually putting something in the real world. It's something that lots of people talk about, but not lots of people do. And the two people that I'm lucky enough to have up here with me today come from the camp of people that know how to do it. So Nick here comes from the startup camp. He earned his stripes co-founding a business you probably are all aware of, DesignMyNight, and taking it to a successful exit in 2017 for over £30 million. He's now an angel investor in 55 different startups through his investment arm, Horseplay Ventures. He has a global top 3 business podcast around investing and pitching called Pitch Deck, and he's now co-founding not one but 2 other businesses, one in the sales and operations space called Trumpet, and another one, Sequel, which helps connect pro athletes with the best global startups in the world. On the other side of the fence, coming from a career building products for 10 million plus customers, at one of the largest banks in the UK, we've got Zainab. She's a senior digital product manager at Barclays, has been named a Tech Woman 100, a rising star in financial services at the Black British Business Awards, and in 2020 and in 2021, she was in the female leads list of 67 trailblazing women across the world. Very impressive. In her day job at Barclays, she's had a hand in both the retail and business side of things, of the digital products, working on the first retail open banking products, some new buy now, pay later integrations, and now part of the e-commerce roadmap as well. We haven't got a lot of time. We're already running a bit behind, which is classic Planes. But what we're going to do, where we're going to start today is talking about the very first part, is deciding what to build and why you go about building it. So, Nick, I'm going to start with you. You obviously see a lot of ideas at Horseplay for investing, and then also things yourself that you're deciding to come up and build. When you consider what to do, what to invest in, what to build, how do you go about balancing data and gut feel, and what's the process that you employ to do that?
Yeah, so I think the angel investing side is very different to actually the stuff that I'm going to build and found. So from the building side of things, it all starts with like ideation. And a lot of people say, oh, where do you come up with your ideas? Are you just like sat in a room trying to think about startups? But it never happens like that. It's more when you're just out and about. I'm always challenging things. I'm always challenging processes that I'm doing every day. I'm always challenging products I interact with day to day. And obviously, experience is very big. So for Trumpet, I thought back to our days with DesignMyNight when we had a team of about 100 and looked at the different teams and thought, okay, well, which ones could do with improving? And it was sales for us. So then when I get the idea down, I think, and I worked at L'Oreal, by the way, so I have done my corporate stripes as well back in the day. And I think for me as a startup founder, I just get it down on a piece of paper, a one-pager. I don't go bigger than a one-pager. I give it a project name. I don't think of a brand name. I'm not thinking about logos or anything like that at that stage. I give it a product name, and then I'm just thinking, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? How do I think this solution can solve that? And what does a very rough outline of a product look like, all on one page? Put that together, and then I just cold outreach and outreach my network. So for Trumpet, we spoke to 150 salespeople and co-founders. Sent out the one page. I go, hey, this is our idea. I'd love to hop on a 15-minute call, or here's a type form. So always give people two options. Most people don't want to jump on a call. So you give them the type form, and it will take 5 minutes. And I think the biggest thing that I try and do is disprove that it's a good idea. So I think a lot of people, when they come up with an idea, think, how can I prove that it is a good idea? And if you frame it like that, you're going to ask very different questions. So if you go into it thinking, how can I prove that this is a bad idea? Actually, the questions that you frame really challenge your idea more. So I'm trying to get out of experts. Why won't this work? Why is this a bad idea? What do you use already that negates the need for my idea? And then we basically collate all of that feedback, use something like Notion, build a big board, everyone we've spoken to, positive, negative, ideas. You get loads of ideas when you're speaking to people as well. And then if you look at that board and you think it's overwhelmingly positive, then you think, okay, let's go on that process. So that's how we sort of start on whether it's a good idea. Each one probably takes about 2 to 3 months of speaking to people, and we can obviously run ideas at the same time. So normally when we're ideating, we're probably running about 3 ideas at the same time, 2 fall away, and hopefully 1 comes through. And angel investing is a lot more gut. So it's a lot more the founder, do I like their mission, speaking to a bit my network about the market, but I make those decisions a lot quicker than ones I'm going to found.
Interesting. And Zainab, you obviously work on really big, audacious projects at Barclays. How do you go about taking those and breaking them down into bite-sized chunks?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a development of like mindset. I think about, like, we always talk about MVPs, right? Minimum viable products, and what's the bare minimum we need to get in to start realizing that value. And I actually don't think we ever really think about the most minimum version of that. So I think it's about constantly like breaking down these big concepts and thinking of like, how can we actually just really truly work in an agile way and start to get small change in earlier and iterate as much as we can. You know, we try to work in an agile way, or I guess as agile as you can be in like a 325 plus year old organization. But it's just around like, yeah, that kind of exercise and actually how we view and redefine the projects that we work on. And it kind of, I guess, reminds me of the open banking kind of program that we delivered a few years back. You know, open banking came onto the scene. You know, it's this massive new concept, this technology. You know, customers will be able to share their financial information with whoever they want, and you know, it's going to transform the industry. And what do we do to provide that value? And you know, we were thinking of these, you know, really, really great innovative ideas around, you know, how do we get a customer to share, you know, all of their financial information with us, because then we can get a better view of the customer, but also we can start to do really cool things around like surfacing insights to them, or, you know, just offering services we would never be able to do because we wouldn't have that sight of all of their accounts. And, you know, what does that look like? You know, actually we're going to work on a brand new app that is more of a, you know, financial platform rather than our transactional app, and all of these great ideas. And actually, you know, when we started to go through customer testing, we were realizing the core problem actually is customers don't even know what this is yet. So, you know, we felt that there was this MVP, which was, you know, they're going to share all their accounts with us and it's going to provide so much value to them. But actually, our MVP ended up being almost like, how do we educate them? And so we ended up just launching open banking, and it was, you can link just your current account with us. And all it is was read-only access. So you can just see your balance and your transactions. You can't do anything. And actually, what that meant was we got something in quicker than we probably would have if we were looking at like a bigger, more detailed project. But also, customers were able to start playing around with this thing and actually understanding what open banking meant for them. And so, you know, we started with this concept of they're going to connect all of their accounts, and it's all going to be shown in one app. And actually, it ended up being, just current accounts to start with, just the top 8 most used providers in the UK at the time. And, it's going to be read-only access, and then we can kind of iterate and build from there. So, and we ended up doing that, introducing kind of being able to then make payments off the back of these products and other things. And it was just about like continuously challenging what we felt was the MVP and what we felt, was the project that was the priority at the time. And I think it's that balance between like there's so much value we want to deliver, but we also want to deliver it as quickly as we can. And so just continuously challenging like what we think that MVP is, and using things like customer testing, that sort of feedback to help influence that.
How do you go about testing like customer segments when you have 10 million of them to choose from? Especially when you've got like a new proposition that has some risk to the bank or some risk to the reputation.
Yeah, there's a few things. So if we think about like testing to help shape the journeys that we're working on, we do customer testing for everything. You basically can't launch anything new into the app unless you evidence that you've done some sort of customer testing and research. So we'll have kind of really in-depth one-on-one sessions of customers, showing them things we're working on, getting that feedback, and then having to evidence that we're incorporating that feedback into the changes that we're working on. So like all of that has to be documented. It could be that we send a survey out to thousands of customers and say, pick your top 3 favorite features out of this thing to do with your mortgage, and let us know what's important to you. So we have these kind of customer testing tools that we use to develop those insights. And then we also used to have a beta app, so customers can download this version of the Barclays app off the App Store called Launchpad. And it was exactly the same as our normal app, so you could go in and manage your accounts that way, but they knew that by signing up to Launchpad, we would launch features into that app before our main app. It was a much smaller population of customers. Obviously, they opted in to downloading it, so we knew they were sort of our early adopters anyway. And so we would kind of put things in that app and kind of gauge from their responses, how well certain journeys would do. Or sometimes it was just a question. We just say, do you want to be able to, do you want to be able to see a chart of how much your balance has grown over 5 years? Yes or no? And so that was a great way for us to kind of actually launch things into the app without it impacting, the millions of customers in our main app. And then also being able to make decisions around, okay, we've launched this into Launchpad. Is this the right thing to continue to go with and launch to everyone or not? So that was great. Unfortunately, we had to decommission it. I think there was probably something around having to manage 2 versions of the Barclays app at the same time. But we do now in the main app have like a Launchpad area, so customers can kind of still turn it on, and in their main app, there's kind of a little rocket icon. And again, they can be asked questions about things that we're working on. So it's like, how do you incorporate it and get that sort of insight in? And then, sorry, this is going to be long, and then when we think about like the actual launching of the products, there's a few things we do as well. So we tend to kind of have what we call like a friends and family release. So, we'll get to a point where, we've tested the journey, we're ready for it to basically be launched. But before we launch to all customers, we'll kind of launch to friends and families of Barclays, tends to be other colleagues, right? So I might have been working on a journey, maybe it's open banking, right? And we'll just get a small group of colleagues, and either through using test devices or, getting them to download a certain version of the app that isn't accessible on the App Store yet, they are accessing the live app with that feature in. So it's exactly like how it would be if it was on the App Store for everyone else. And it helps us understand what that feature or journey looks like in real life without having to launch to everyone all at once. So that tends to be our kind of very final step of testing before we launch, because it's like actually the real app. It's not a test environment anymore. But again, a smaller population, so if there's anything that has slipped through the cracks, again, we can deal with it then. And also we're getting additional feedback from the friends and families. And then the final, approach we can also take is when we are ready to then launch to the app, it is still millions of customers. If we're doing something like open banking where, it isn't just a subsection of customers that can access it, anybody can choose to link their accounts in. So again, there's that risk of, do we deliver this change and everyone sees it all at once, and if something goes wrong, what's that impact? What do we need to do? So we tend to then what we call throttle the feature. So we will start by launching it to maybe 1% of customers. And that's through kind of use of feature switches. So we can switch it on for a certain group of customers, and it tends to be randomized. And then, maybe we do that for the first week or two and monitor that activity. Are things going wrong? Like, how are customers progressing through this journey? Is there anything that, doesn't look quite right? And then, maybe we'll just go up to 2%, and then 5%, and then 10%, and 25%, and so on. So again, it just helps, because we have so many people in one platform, it just helps to kind of mitigate some of those risks and kind of manage that rollout, so we can minimize any potential negative impact, and still feel like we're able to deliver as soon as we can, but like not just feel like there's a lot of.
You're not like sending it to 10 million.
Yeah, I'm not sending something that's potentially got an issue into 10 million people all at once, and then we're going to get like 10 million complaints the next day. So yeah, that's kind of what we try to mitigate. Yeah. So I think those, some of the kind of approaches that we take.
And Nick, when it comes, I know like at Trumpet you're really involved in the product at the moment. How do you guys think about the roadmap and what it is, the feedback you're getting from customers, and how does that influence do you build what they ask for, or do you have an idea of what it is you want to build, and how do you play those two things off against each other?
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't got 10 million customers yet. Soon. So we have like a hierarchy of importance internally, and that is normally number one, vision, strategy. So that's got nothing to do with the customer. It's the founders who are trying to build a vision of something, and we're here, but we want the product to be here, and we constantly need the product to be working our way towards that bigger vision. Number two is feedback. So similarly, even on a smaller product, feedback is super important to us. So every week, founders and our product manager is on the phone to customers and asking them what they like, what they don't like, what they'd like to improve, what features would they like to see in the product, and noting that all down, and we keep a separate board about all the customer feedback. We also have a product called Sleek Plan, which we've used, which is like a front-facing roadmap, so a public roadmap. So any of our customers can see it. They can go and see what's in our roadmap. They can upvote, downvote, add things to it as well, and we can engage with them on that. We actually hook up that roadmap to our dev GitHub. So actually, when we release that feature, it messages all of those customers automatically saying, hey, that thing you wanted and upvoted, it's now live. It does that all automatically. So that's a nice sort of like aha moment for customers. And then the third element for us is the larger customers. So we already work with customers like Amex and Sky, and some big customers that obviously want different things to smaller customers. So we have to manage their expectations on what they want with the rest of the platform. I think that the danger as a startup is if you get one big enterprise client, you just build for them, which is not the right way to do it. You have to temper their expectations. They've bought an off-the-shelf solution, and they're paying a small fee for an off-the-shelf solution. It's not a bespoke build. And then as founders, we sit down and look at those three. We rank everything. We have sprints every week. Before each sprint, lead dev, product manager, founders sit down and decide what's going to be in that sprint. And yeah, we release weekly at Trumpet, and we did at DesignMyNight until the end as well. And yeah, it's the balance of all of those three things, basically.
How have you seen it change? I guess like Trumpet, you're all sort of at the start-ish of the journey compared to DesignMyNight. Like, you were still able to release weekly, but did the things you were releasing change in the way that you went about? Because like, presumably you're doing like more bug fixes as it gets bigger, or more like small iterations rather than at the moment. I mean, your roadmap, you're just like constantly tuning out new things.
DesignMyNight was similar. So DesignMyNight, the B2C site that people know, didn't actually change that much. Should have changed it more. And our sort of why we were successful was actually our SaaS. We had 3 bits of SaaS, so reservation software, a ticketing software, and a vouchering software. And they ran like Trumpet, so constantly evolving. We had Mitchells & Butler that had 1,800 sites on it. We had an independent bar that was 1 site on it. So it's exactly the same, like tempering what a Mitchells & Butler need to an individual bar to what our vision, like how do we stay ahead of OpenTable or Bookertable with like innovative ideas, and it was always tempering the 3. Bugs, interestingly, again, at corporate, with 10 million, it's probably a bit different, but we actually don't just fix bugs straight away. Like, we will then rank those bugs as like P1 to P3. P1 is like that needs to be fixed automatically. Actually, if there's some small bugs in the software that only like one person's found, and this feature launch is more important in our mind, we'll prioritize that. So we actually prioritize our bugs with our new features on every sprint.
Cool. That reminds me of something you told me about a product you launched that wasn't going to be perfect, and you knew that. When you told me that, I mean, it'd be, if you can share that story, it'd be interesting, because from our perspective, like, you've got 10 million customers and you're launching something that's going to be broken, or not perfect.
Broken's a bit of a strong word. I'll provide just a bit of context. So, Barclays offer a lot of financing to different businesses. So I think one of the more known ones, if you were to buy an iPhone of Apple on finance, we provide that financing, so that's Barclays. So we do that for lots of businesses. And a couple of years ago, we launched a partnership with Amazon to do something similar. So if you're shopping on Amazon, you can choose to pay off your basket in, take it out on finance, pay it back in monthly installments. So say if you bought like a TV on Amazon, through Barclays, you could actually pay it off, £10 a month, over 20 months or whatever. So that was like a really actually quite kind of pivotal partnership. It's the first time we've worked with Amazon in any sort of capacity, so it's the start of a really great relationship. And obviously, Amazon being super digital as a business, for context, with the Apple financing, there's no kind of digital experience for the customer. It's been going on for years, and it's like, really it's like you pay off your product and you're done, but if you do need anything, you have to call. But actually, with Amazon, that was kind of never on the card. So one thing that we kind of agreed on was that we would actually allow these customers to use the Barclays app to manage the product. So just to be a bit more like proactive around this purchase that you're paying off, you'll be able to see how many payments you've got left, what your balance is, that kind of thing. So that was, and I guess the great thing for us was, this was available to all Amazon customers in the UK. So a lot of the customers weren't actually Barclays customers, but then they were having to access our app to manage their products, and it was just a great way to kind of build a relationship with a new cohort. And so, kind of similar to my last example, there was a bunch of things we wanted to do in the app for these customers, right? And want them to, if they wanted to change their direct debit date, if they wanted to make overpayments, if they wanted to generate their statement or whatever it was, we had a whole bunch of things we wanted to do. And so, firstly it was about, well, we kind of want to get this product out, so what could be that MVP? So again, actually, it's a bit of a theme to everything I do. We started with read-only access, so you could go in and see what you've just bought with Amazon on finance, and see it in the Barclays app, and see how many, what your interest rate was, how many payments you had next. And then the next feature we worked on, because we saw so many calls coming in, was for people who wanted to make overpayments or pay the whole balance off early, and so we wanted to do that in the app. And so, it's a very long story, but long story short, so because so many customers of Amazon were not Barclays customers, we launched just a generic debit card payment journey. So you could pay down your balance with any of your debit cards. And sometimes when you're shopping, and if it's a certain amount, you get asked to verify the payment through your banking app, or you'll get a text or something. And so that was fine for us. So they were in our app and they're saying, I want to pay down my Amazon balance, and maybe they're using a Lloyd's card, and it's £1,000 they want to pay down. We can just connect to Lloyd's, and then they say yes with Lloyd's, and then they come back to our app and it's done. But we found a massive issue when it was the Barclays cards, because we're already in the app, you're already authenticated in the app, but then we still need to authenticate you for this particular payment. And so there was a new technology we had to build to basically have a journey within a journey in our app to do that appropriately. And that was brand new, and a lot of testing had to go into that. And so we got to a point where everything but that part was ready. And so, I was asked, what do you want to do with this? Because, there's deadlines that our client expects us to adhere to. We want to kind of get this out and start minimizing those calls coming through to our contact centers. And so, we had to think about a lot of things. Firstly, how many of the customers were Barclays customers? It wasn't many, because it was just, lots of people who were Amazon customers. So already that's a smaller cohort that impacted. when do we actually trigger this authentication? Well, it's only after a certain value of payment you're making. So again, we could see the average amount of payments that customers were calling us to make. We knew that, that threshold was quite high. So, loads of things that we had to do to really understand what would that impact be. And so actually we got comfortable with saying, actually, we're going to go live with this. We're going to launch this. We know that there's an issue for this Barclays card piece. But, we had to work really closely with our tech teams to say, when will that be fixed? So we had that kind of timeline. And in the nature of, again, working iteratively, this is the way that we should be doing things, really. And I think you feel uncomfortable with it, but we were able to launch it, and then 2 months later we got that fixed in, so it worked for all of the cards, like also Barclays. So yeah, I think it's sort of that question of and to your point around that prioritization of defects and stuff, it was a smaller group that were impacted. You kind of have to have that conversation around how much risk are we willing to take, and how do we maybe communicate to people if there is an issue. So we had a lot of communications around the fact that this won't work if you're using this, but it'll be working in X amount of time, and just all of those things you can do to kind of mitigate it while still kind of not stopping the pace at which we want to deliver at. So it's all fixed now, so it's fine. But it's just something, I think it's a mindset thing that I think we're definitely working through as a whole organization. How do you feel empowered to make these quite difficult decisions, and how do we not view, not thinking that kind of old school waterfall way and everything's got to be perfect immediately. It's actually about how much value you're starting to deliver incrementally. So I think it's definitely a journey we're still on.
How do you think about that incremental iteration? Because I know by your own admission you can be a bit of a perfectionist. How do you
I'm a customer of yours.
Yeah. But how do you think about that when it comes to the Trumpet roadmap? And
I've worked quite hard on that. So MVP is all the rage, and there's lots of books for startups it's gone out of my head now, Lean Startup that everyone reads and loves, and that's where the MVP came from. Just put stuff out in there, get feedback. I'm sort of halfway away from that. I'm all up for putting out features and testing features to then see if they're useful. There's no point spending 6 months building something without testing it, and then you put it out and no one wants to use it. As a brand person, I'm very big on how the look and feel of it is. So I'll never put anything out crappy that doesn't look good or feel good. But yeah, Trumpet, because there's a ton of components to it. We wanted to launch our own video recording widget, record your own demos natively. So some of you might know Loom or Vidyard, which are quite big tools out there. We wanted to build our own version of that. So my product manager, who we have lots of tete-a-tetes with, was okay, great, we'll build our own Loom, which is a $1 billion company. But let's start with just a basic video recorder and see if Trumpet's digital spaces. So people just want to record them saying a message through their laptop camera and see if they want to do that. So we did that. Actually took us 2 weeks to build, looked good, dropped it in, and it became our most used widget in Trumpet. So then we were okay, great, what's next? Okay, record your screen and your face to do a demo. Okay, that's going to take 3 weeks, great. And then over a process, and it is now our most used widget. So we just keep iterating on that widget and making it better and better and better, rather than having to build something brand new. And actually within probably 2 months of building incrementally, we have something that is as good as Loom within our own product now.
One small subscription of.
Well, one small subscription, yeah.
This brings me on to my last question, I think, which is, have you got an example of a product or a feature that you've launched which failed, and why did it fail, and what did you learn?
I think the biggest one was DesignMyNight. We had about 30 grand in the bank, and still relatively early. And we thought, Groupon had just launched and was getting notoriety everywhere. And we're that's a good idea. Why don't we build our own version of Groupon, but for cocktails? So we would do a deal with a bar and say, okay, look, offer a £4 cocktail if 100 people buy this voucher on DesignMyNight, and they will get a £4 cocktail. And obviously bars were keen for it for promo, so that was no problem. we did the opposite of everything I've just said. So we didn't look at any data. We didn't ask any customers. We just thought Groupon looks cool. Let's do that. We didn't build an MVP. We actually outsourced it to an agency to actually
Never do that.
Never do that. It wasn't you. It wasn't you. It wouldn't have failed if it was planes, obviously. And that cost like 15 grand building this whole deals platform. We call it DesignMyNight Deals, so that didn't take very long. And we launched it, and we were selling like 3 vouchers because it was early days. And what we didn't figure was that Groupon has like 1 million people on their mailing list. We had like 5,000. So if like 0.5% of people are buying the voucher, you're not going to hit that threshold. And we kept at it only for like a month or 2, and then we were like, this isn't working. It's distracting on our site from the main core offering of DesignMyNight as well. So we actually scrapped it. It was half our cash in the bank, probably like 4 or 5 months work, and we scrapped it after 2 months, and learned a very big lesson.
Yeah, cool. Zainab, what about you? What's the worst thing you've launched?
I don't know. I think I've kind of touched upon. I think because of the nature of the projects that I've worked on, I think I don't have something like that where it's like we've gone in and we've pulled. But I think there's definitely definitely a lot of scenarios of launching features and just being like, are customers even using this or not? And then kind of like, I guess, maybe having to tweak them or improve, or like, I think about open banking, like generally in the industry, at least for like on the retail side, it hasn't really caught on unless it's maybe for like, like maybe for like affordability, like, using platforms that will assess your affordability for loans or like eligibility for certain products. But in terms of it being like a everyday, like customer experience, it hasn't really developed in the industry. So actually, like, we haven't, I guess the decision was like, we've done some sort of MVP in there, but there's not really much more we're probably going to work on for a little while, because it just doesn't seem to be that appetite actually from customers to like continue using it. So we did see an uptake because we had a banner that said, do you have other accounts with your bank? Like, you can actually view them here. But and again, with open banking today, the customer every 3 months has to basically re-consent to basically you using that data, and a lot of customers will just not do it after a while. So I think it's still there, and I'm not in that team anymore. But I think there's a conversation around like strategy-wise. I don't know why that's funny. Are there Barclays people here? But yeah, I think there's a conversation around like, when do you stop maybe like, really trying to press on with things, and actually when do you accept that maybe this will be its final form, or like at some point it will maybe be pulled completely. So yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on with that.
Cool. I've got lots more questions, but I won't ask them. We have probably about like 5 or 6 minutes, so a couple of questions from the crowd, if anyone has anything they want to ask. Got to do it.
Having worked in startups and corporates, I kind of get the feeling that in corporates you've got to massively overplan and sell something before you can launch it, where you're highlighting that you can put out some stuff a little bit faster. And when you talk about open banking, you can ask everybody to the cows come home, and nobody gets it until they see it.
Yeah.
For the benefit. So how do you guys take for, sometimes you just need to build it without overthinking it? And you've obviously done that in previous businesses. How do you use it? How could you do it in corporate to go, we can't overthink this. We actually just need to show someone how it works. Get not just feedback, just usage. Some people that need to understand how to do it. It's just so getting to that level of testing before 20 weeks of planning or everything else. Actually just make it then proof point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the processes in place in the company, but I think, at least for me, I feel like over the last years, like, that is starting to change, so that is becoming a more accepted approach to what we're doing. I think it's this acknowledgement that if we keep doing things in the way that we have been, we're not going to keep up with everything that's going on in the industry. So I think that's still happening. I think I think when I think about where that's worked well in teams I've been in, it has been sometimes just a single leader who's just been able to kind of say and empower the colleagues around them to say, actually, like, we do need to kind of be a bit more experimental and just be a bit more like harsh in the decisions that we're making, and kind of don't wait for us to engage, you know, all of these different people before deciding, you know, what that MVP even is. So I think that's starting to change. I think the culture in the teams that I've been in has allowed like colleagues to feel empowered to kind of be able to say, this is something I think we need to try. And then obviously there's a conversation around how do we then deliver that within, you know, to what I said earlier, that kind of does minimize, you know, any kind of risk or customer detriment. But I think sometimes it's just that culture change where people are told, like, you know, doing something quickly and getting out the door and then changing your mind isn't necessarily a failure anymore. It's just part of the process. And I think that's where maybe like some of our companies just have like more of a journey to be on than others. So yeah, I think sometimes it's a culture thing, because I feel now, like the teams I've been in more recently, it's just been like there's like an agreement of we need to get things done like quickly, like and then the conversation is, what do we need to do to unlock like people or process or whatever it is to make sure that we can do this within these time frames? And then that's the conversation. So is it that we need more people? Do we need more like developers or whatever it might be? And then that's what the conversation becomes, like how do we unlock this value sooner? But it helps to kind of know that people are bought into that as an approach.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, similar to culture, like, it has to come from management. So especially in the corporate world. The thing in the corporate world is there's always someone's head on the chopping block, seemingly. So it's better to just play it safe. I think that's the problem in the corporate world. But I think if it comes from management, yeah, whether it's resource or like, we're going to do this, we're going to set up a little squad or a little incubator within the team, we're going to give you some resource. I remember I did that at L'Oreal even. It's a very boring thing, but I did a marketing for professional hair care that was in salons. And if you go into a salon, you'll look out for it now, there's normally, if there's a new shampoo launch or something, normally they've just got like a tent card on the cutting station. I was like, everyone's got a tent card, I was like, can't we stick something to the mirror? Because everyone's staring at themselves in the mirror. I was like, well, why don't we think about sticking something to the mirror and putting the product on the mirror? And luckily, I had a great manager who's a good friend of mine now. And he was like, okay, I'm going to give you some budget. I'm going to give you our agency to go and build a prototype. And it's like your project. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. Like, we've accounted for it in budget. And then launched it. We put it in, you know, we had like 1,000 salons. We put it in like 10 salons and see what the uptake was. And then they did roll it out eventually. But that came from my manager to be like, okay, I'm going to allocate you budget and go for it. Because also you don't want to high creativity. I think if you're so data-driven, I think as product people, we're so data-driven all the time, which is important, but you've also got to feel like in your gut, if you are a creative person, you've got to trust your gut as well, which is like Steve Jobs' element. You know, it's like they don't know what they want, let's give them what they don't know that they want. So you don't want to like extinguish that creativity. So sometimes at my startups, I just pull rank and I'm like, my gut is telling me we need to do this. So like, how can we do it quickly and cheaply? But I do want to test this. I don't care what the data's saying. And if it fails, and we move on. If it's successful, great. So yeah, it's just letting that happen. I think you can do that in a corporate and maybe setting up little squads with budget.
Cool. Yeah, Remy.
Slightly related on, you said, Nick, on if you have an idea, you send to 150 people, and you were talking about like obviously doing surveys and getting like 1,000 respondents and what have you. The other school of thought is if you've asked 12 people, that's all you need to know, right? So what are the benefits of like the quantities of feedback, pros and cons, versus doing the let's do 12 people see it and move on, or what do you think and move on?
So yeah, for us, we tend to do the one-on-one smaller group feedback for almost everything, because that's about we need to walk people through the journey, right, and just understand at every stage what they're experiencing. And I think you're right. There's a point where you don't have to do that anymore. So yeah, that's always a small quantity. And then when I think about where we've done bigger pieces of research, it's been more around, I guess, like concepts, or like, you know, maybe we want to understand what people value over certain other kind of features, and maybe we've got a whole bunch of features. So I think about open banking, we had lots of different use cases. So it was around like, you know, affordability, it was around like money management, and we just wanted to kind of get a flavor of, you know, we did this is what open banking is, this is what it can do, these are some examples of what you could do with it, rank all of these. So I think it's that kind of more high-level insights before you then drill down into, okay, what are these journeys that sit behind this, and then how do we get that really, really detailed insight from one-on-one sessions. So I think it tends to be much higher level, maybe more influencing like the strategy that we might, or the direction we might want to go in. Just to get a flavor of what made the majority one, and then it's like, you know, when it comes to actually defining the journey, absolutely the one-on-one sessions are where we'd get that value. So that's, I think, that kind of difference for us.
And the 150 was to launch the business, so that was a big decision. So that's where we go deep, like to see, are we going to launch a new business or not? But to your point, so we've got about 8,000 users on Trumpet at the moment. In our public roadmap, if something is upvoted like 10 or 15 times, we see that as a trigger, and we'll be like, okay, that's enough that more than 2 people think this is a good idea. So exactly to your point, like we then don't waste time trying to speak to 50, 100 people. Like 10 to 15 is enough at our size, at least, to see that as a trigger that people want it.
Cool. We're out of time. I think we're going to take a couple of minutes now if you need to use the facilities, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much, my panel. Back to Sam.
So, how many people here at their company are trying to do something with AI at the moment? Yeah, quite a few. This next panel is going to be about AI and innovation with AI, and it might seem like an interesting choice of topic, but it's a very easy topic for everybody to be able to sort of relate to at the moment, because AI is pervasive, right? And it's like the biggest topic of innovation at the moment. So our next chair is Valeria, and Valeria is a partner at Projects by If. Projects by If is a design, policy, and technology agency who partner with businesses to create products and services which have a big focus on trust. And they are going to be talking about integrating AI into product strategy. Welcome, Valeria and panelists.
Hello everybody. My name is Valeria, I'll be your moderator today. And on the panel with me today we have you and Henry. And before we start, I think the nice thing to do is to ask themselves to introduce themselves in 2 minutes. Henry, do you want to start?
Yeah, cool. Nice to see everyone today. I'm Henry. I'm one of the founders at Planes, tech director, software engineer by trade, so I do still get a little bit hands-on and like to code from time to time. I have a particular interest in generative AI. I've loved it ever since interacting with the OpenAI models and whatnot. Built lots of hobby projects, an embarrassing amount at this point, and also integrated into a few of our client projects as well, which has been really good fun.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yu. So I'm a senior product manager at a company called Beamery. We are a SaaS company in the talent and HR space, and I lead AI products at Beamery, and I've worked at many different places, including big organizations like the big banks or Walmart back in the US. And I've worked as a data scientist at some point, technical program management at some point, eventually doing product on data, on AI. So basically spent almost all my career in some sort of, one way or another, dealing with the things around algorithms, AI, modeling, etc.
Thank you. maybe I should introduce myself as well, otherwise it's really weird. So I feel a complete imposter being here. I'm actually a service designer, and service design and product sometimes they don't really sit head to head, eye to eye. But yeah, I'm a partner project by If. We think trust and trustworthiness are really at the heart of product, and building technologies and experiences that put people care at the center is what we really believe in. We all have a responsibility, a duty, and it's an imperative that we start thinking about responsible AI more and embed responsibility and ethics in the way we work every day. So I'm gonna moderate the panel with that in mind today. My first question for our panel, our key question, what we're gonna try to answer today is how to successfully integrate AI in organizations, and our answer is your existing product strategy. So can you tell us a little bit who is doing it right? Can you give us an example of a truly customer-centric AI product strategy that you've seen, or maybe from your own experience? Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I sort of feel the need to plug some of the things that we're doing right now. Not really. It's just because I know it more, right? And then obviously, I actually think OpenAI's design is very customer-centric. They're very good with what they're trying to do. But I think one of the things that we're trying to do right now is to help because we work with some of the biggest customers, biggest companies in the world as our customers, helping them with their talent and HR decisions and workflows. So what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to focus on helping these customers complete their skills-based transformation in terms of managing their talent. So instead of thinking of jobs, roles, people, you sort of like start to think of them more as skills. Right? It gives you a certain sense of agility, both in terms of aggressive hiring and hiring for the right people, and also in terms of economic uncertainty, helps you manage better how do you restructure your workforces the right way. But obviously in terms of understanding skills, understanding roles, you can imagine AI playing a very big part in here. One of the pain points that we always see is customers would say, I don't even know where to start. I span across the globe. I have the same roles being called 5 different names. I have the same skills being called 100 different names. We worked with a customer where for essentially 1,000 roles, we received like 37,000 versions of a job description. And they have the literal, in the same company, one skill being called like 56 different names. There's like absolutely no way that they can get started on truly understanding what they need to achieve their business goals and what they need, how can they then go both from an internal perspective and external perspective, find these people. And the reason that this is, I think, a good example of how I think we're actually being customer-centric with our AI usage is this is a very AI-heavy product. As you can even see from the examples I give, there's no way to have a person manually do it. I mean, the other alternative, usually these companies would go for hire consultancies like McKinsey and work for 2 years to do something like that, and then the moment it's done, it's already out of date, right?
I'm gonna 100% quote you on this one.
Yeah.
AI substituting McKinsey is my dream.
Work with them, help their work. I think I would say that it's a good example is we're trying to provide this service to companies, and we don't really go from an angle of AI is powerful. We've spent however many years developing internally our AI capabilities, our fine-tuning large language models before it even became really wildly known in the public. But it wasn't because, now we have the ability, let's find something to solve. It's because we're seeing customers truly have those issues. They need to have the agility in their human resource management, right? It started with some customers approaching us and saying, well, I need to let go of 4,000 people, but I have 1,000 openings. If there's no way to help them work that out, then they have to both spend the money letting people go. And it's a very bad thing, right? Emotionally bad, stressful for those people. And then they need to spend money to hire these people and have them trained up to speed. So the key is that it wasn't, the starting point isn't AI, although AI is really the solution that spans across everything. Starting point is customers have a need. And what do we need to do to answer those needs? And we need to have a scalable situation that's kept up to date. We need to have fast and scalable ways to digest all of your job descriptions, extract your skills, normalize your roles, skills. All of those things give you suggestions. And so we start from the problem. We don't start with the solution. And if AI naturally then becomes the solution, you'll know it's customer-centric. Then we obviously then review all of the parts, how we can unite all the solutions we have to help customers do it. And if we are missing some parts that we would need, and we found out that we're missing some products, and then we start building those products from anew. So that's a lot of rants and a little bit of plugging, so I gotta stop there.
I think it was 100% clear, like start from a customer problem.
Yeah.
Henry, do you have anything to add?
Well, I suppose when I look at the products that I'm using almost daily that have recently introduced AI, I think most of them are using OpenAI's models. So things like GitHub Copilot, which suggests code snippets for you. Things like Notion AI that will summarize your text. I mean, I'm a terrible at writing content, so I'll just write bullet points and it'll, spit out a much better worded document. And then like Leapsome AI, I don't know whether anybody does 360 reviews on Leapsome, but that's been really useful when you've got a ton of Leapsome reviews. You go and just jot down a bunch of bullet points and then it kind of like writes it in a nice constructive way. I mean, I don't fully lean on that, but it's useful at times when you're stressed on other things. But when I look at those and the theme through that, a lot of it is, and we're talking about like trust and how we like trust. We kind of build this trust with the user when using AI. I think a common theme through that is it's assistive. It's not replacing the user journey. It's not completely, it's not removing the user from the equation. And I think it's really important that we're kind of seeing AI in kind of this. It's a very broad thing, and it's a very dynamic tool that we can use in our products, and it doesn't need to completely replace the user. And I think as you get deeper into understanding the different techniques and implementation patterns, you can start to understand how, as you was talking about, how we can kind of implement features that are, behind the scenes, the user doesn't even need to know about it, but it just streamlines that process for the user, and they're able to kind of be a bit more ambiguous with their input or whatever it is. So yeah, I think that kind of assistive and making sure that the user has a say in the output of whatever that action is, rather than it kind of doing the job completely for them, which a lot of companies are kind of doing at the moment, which I don't think is right.
Yeah, I think like finding that balance between human intervention and automation is going to be like crucial in success of products. I have a follow-up question specifically for you. Were there any unexpected benefits of incorporating Gen AI in your Beamery product that kind of like helped you strengthen customer relationship, or like anything that you were not expecting that came out of it?
It wouldn't. I would say because I've been working with AI for so long, it's almost like I expect the things. So I basically think it's natural that it should bring you the benefits. But I think one of the areas is, we all, of course, also have a chat generative AI product now. But some of this is using Gen AI, like the algorithms that's behind Gen AI, in ways that you wouldn't naturally think of as generative. Like if we're extracting information from natural languages, it's just almost the same as you create natural languages, right? You wouldn't think of it as generative. Customers don't think of it that way too. but all they know is I have these big block of text and information flying around everywhere and all kinds of language. I don't know what to do with it. So we will just naturally take it, and then we clean it, and we reduce things, and then we present it to you. Sometimes we present it to you also in a generative way. Like we'll have a paragraph explaining, for example, I know exactly what you're looking for, why this person would be a good match for you, and sometimes it's not exactly in that format. You have to find the right usage for the right things. I think unexpectedly is really confirming in a way that customers understand where things are truly valuable. I think sometimes we start to almost get the impression right now that because there is such a focus or like the hype on generative and chatbots that people will only want that. In some cases, that's what they come to you with. They're like, I need this thing. And when you really talk to them about what are you really trying to solve? And is this the right solution for you? And is this sometimes the right solution for some of your workflows, but not the right solution for all of your workflows? They are open to it, and then they actually appreciate, like at least in my perspective, what I've seen so far. They appreciate the thoughtfulness, and they appreciate that you're not just doing whatever they say because they may not be aware of all the things that's possible.
Thank you. This is a really nice segue to my next question, because I think, especially in the last 8 months, we've seen a proliferation of like AI as a solution, chatbots everywhere, automation everywhere, et cetera, but limited examples of products where the AI is truly answering a customer need. So it's just a plaster to, accelerating, automating something. Obviously, every company is still adapting and learning and building, et cetera, but can you share any insights or tips on overcoming resistance or skepticism with internal stakeholders when it comes to really advocating for AI being at the center of your product strategy?
Yeah, sure. So, you kind of answered a lot of it in the question. I think, touching on some interesting things there. I think, obviously, with AI being such a broad topic, and but also at the same time there being this industry leader, ChatGPT, people almost equate AI to ChatGPT these days, and they don't see it for their raw ingredient. There are so many techniques, I think, when you get into learning the implementation detail of integrating with OpenAI, there are a lot of really interesting design patterns. So, for example, you can do what's called retrieval augmented generation, which is where you kind of do a search on some documents of your own, and you can augment the AI's response with those documents, so you can kind of customize the bot in a way. And there are a ton of other things like functions where you can ask the AI to kind of provide a specific format of data so that integrating with your own APIs or whatever it might be is particularly straightforward. So there are a lot of techniques in there that when you get deeper into it and you broaden your understanding, you start to build up this kind of tool set where when a challenge does come along and you're in a workshop, you know that you can use that. You can use a piece of AI or a technique that you've learned and apply it and solve it. As you mentioned, I think a lot of companies are coming together in workshops where they're like, AI, so what? But obviously that doesn't work, and that's where we've got loads of these chatbots all over the internet. But as I say, I think just getting deeper into the techniques and understanding it as a product and tech team, I think is really, really important, because then you can start solving real-world problems.
Yeah, I think particularly in overcoming the concerns or skepticisms, because we are a company where we actually have the word AI written in the mission statement somewhere, so internally people know and believe in it, but because we work with big companies that are heavily regulated, and we work in, obviously, the people area, you would imagine there's a lot of skepticism sometimes with the customers we work with. Like, do they adopt this? Do they not adopt this? And if they adopt this, they are worried that their internal stakeholders are going to be like, I don't know, AI, scary. But I think the key that we try to, some of the ways we try to work with them or help whoever we deal with to convince their internal stakeholders is one, understand what they're concerned about. Is even though people are concerned about AI, there's usually some more specific concerns. Like, is it because you're concerned that it will make decisions that's unknown to you, unaware to you, and later on you're going to be held responsible and you can't just be like, AI did it. Is it because you don't trust the output is fair? Is it because you just, it's rarely that I just don't like it. It's usually some specific concerns, and in that case, I think it's just helping address those. And if you're being a little bit more thoughtful also, and where do you use AI versus where do you not, I think that does help you answer those questions, because you would usually then have a good, like Henry was alluding to as well, have a good explanation that we know that this is our problem and this is why this AI is the solution. And also, like Henry was saying, we try not to, if there are places where you shouldn't let the AI be the final decision maker, be very clear of that. Like in, for example, we make recommendations between people and roles, etc. One of our use cases. We would not naturally automatically reject some people and just not have it show up for you by AI. We'll have all of them there. We will help you score people a little bit and explain to you generative and a lot plus other things why this person may be a good match for the role. Yeah. But ultimately, a human gets to look at all of it, and even the ones we happen to score lower, so that they can make the final decision. I think another thing, I don't know if this is a little sidebar, but another thing that I think people need to realize, and if you are really working with AI, you will realize that, is that AI, by nature of what it is, it's never ever perfect. If anyone expects perfection from AI, you're bound to have problems. It's never perfect, but it should always be useful. So it's about how you make it useful, and don't try to convince stakeholders or anyone else from the perspective of, this is good, this is making exactly the right decision. Think of it as a help.
And I think that, just building on this, there is so much potential damage in thinking about AI as magic.
Yeah.
Because somehow, like, we are expecting it to be perfect, almost godlike, and therefore this really leads really well to my next question. It's like we rehearsed this, did we? But yeah, as I said at the beginning, like, if we believe trust is at the core of AI, when it comes to like embedding AI in products and services, and we've done that for a few years now. We're not, as like, we've been working on this for a while. What we see is like embedding AI in a product naturally leads to either trust gap widening, so people trusting a solution less. So for example, something we've seen is that in places like healthcare environment, if people know that they're speaking with an AI agent, they tend to use a different language, or they tend to like behave in a different way because there is that trust gap. Or on the other side, because it's AI, I just believe it's godlike, they're absolutely right. Take my money now, and I'm sure you have the right answers. So finding the balance between that level of trust is like really challenging. And one of the many ways that you could overcome that challenge is ensuring that transparency and accountability are part of your AI-powered products. So I just wanted to, maybe ask if you've seen any interesting examples of measures where organizations embedded transparency and accountability in the way they were building their AI products. Who wants to start? Small question.
Yeah, it's a big one. So I mean, I think as we've sort of we've touched upon it here and there. I think it comes down to probably not having the AI as the final step in the chain before acting. So, having the kind of customer or user intervention before that goes ahead. Being really clear that it's AI and what it means. So having like extra additional information for those users that are not familiar. I guess from the trust perspective also, I think one thing that we've come across from an agency's perspective also is just is our own customers not trusting it as a thing to put in their own products. So again, it's just coming back to education and also ensuring that you're solving problems in a way that is relevant and kind of applies to a real challenge that you're facing.
And just to build on it, like, it seems like, for example, regulation is clearly going in the direction where, like, if AI is involved in decision making, it needs to be transparent. So the US exec order that was presented last week or 2 weeks ago by Vice President Harris is definitely going in this direction. We're seeing similar things happening in the EU AI Act. So probably it's not going to be like a product decision, but it's going to be more of a compliance regulatory request to be very transparent where AI is involved or not. How to make it then easy and simple for users to understand why and when, that's a product and design challenge.
Yeah.
And that's what I think as product and design people we have to take care of.
Yeah, I think pretty much agree with what Henry was saying about letting a human be the final decision step, being transparent. I think another thing is probably sometimes you have to lean into explainability. So like in AI, there's the classic of sometimes the thing can be really, really good, but it may not be as explainable. And in the cases where plausible and where it makes sense, we actually try to lean into explainability, sometimes at the expense of having the AI be as accurate and powerful as it can be, because you'd rather it's never perfect anyway, and you want to make it useful. And if you cannot explain it, if someone cannot explain it, they will have less trust for it, and then you'll be used a little less and become less useful. And I actually think this is an area where if you fine-tune your LLM, your large language models the right way, and you set the freedom for it like really, really low, you could use it to help you explain things. And this is, for me, actually a really good usage of your generative AI to explain the decisions your models are making in a way that people can understand. But lean into explainability, sometimes at the expense of it being as good in predictions and other things as it could be.
And something that we hear as well when it comes to explainability is it gonna add friction to the experience? And my comment is always, frictionless is not necessarily a better experience when it comes to like AI-powered products. Again, because people tend to potentially believe in everything that is delivered by the AI. So friction can be used in a very meaningful way. Conscious of time, before we open the floor for questions, one last question from me. As an eternal optimist is, I always like to look into the future. So in what ways do you envision like AI continuing to evolve and becoming more and more at the center of product strategy in organizations? Again, a small question, easy.
I think that the biggest opportunity for all of us in the room, I assume we're all in or around the product teams, is just learning. So understanding your tool set. I think that one of the risks that we run into is, again, just adding more chatbots to the world. And I think that, these OpenAI, their announcements last week with their new UI products, I think are less interesting. But I think what's more interesting is as we see these models get more and more advanced as the backbone to everything, I think that the tools and techniques that we're learning today can start to become like really, really valuable and add real delight to our products?
Yeah, well, I think probably a couple things, with one being it will become more and more inevitable, because even starting like almost 10 years ago when I was with bigger companies, they've had this resistance to doing anything that's AI. And now you start to see it waning a little bit because it's probably becoming quite obvious that you are going to have to adopt AI. Think of it as a possible solution, world of possibility. How it will evolve, how it will necessarily land in the world, it's probably still to be determined, but it will become inevitable. It's not something you can avoid. It's something you have to think of. What can I do with it, and how do I use it? How do I accept it? How do I make it safe, trustworthy? All of those things. The other thing is, I do think it will potentially change the way we build products a lot if it becomes so easy to build a product, both from a strategic, coming up with what to build, like the UI design and even the coding part, right? Like generative AI can now help you a lot with those. It almost becomes, it starts to require people working on products to have a little bit more thoughtfulness about what else you're adding that's not really replaceable by AI, or et cetera. Like, does your product have some access to data that isn't available to others, and how would you use that? Are you becoming a platform that AI obviously alone cannot do? Are you really like thinking about your customers' journeys and making it so seamless, more seamless than just having an AI, right? Like you could have a chatbot that have you ask the same questions every day versus you can have something saved. But I think it's just a lot more thought about how do you make sure your product will work with AI and will be safe in a world where some parts of product development will become a lot more cheaper and available to people.
I add one thing. For me, this is like the scary and interesting part is like we're going to start designing for a world where Gen AI is like electricity, it's just powering things in the back. So for me, it's really interesting to see how products or services will evolve when humans will not be involved anymore. So it's going to be AI speaking with AI, potentially on your behalf, because it's not too far. I know it's completely crazy, but it's not too far. So how we actually design products that are almost invisible to the user, that's exciting and scary at the same time. We have another 7-8 minutes, so any questions from the audience? I think there is a microphone, so for the sake of accessibility, please. Yeah, thank you. Do you also want to stand up?
I don't want to stand up. I need to think about how to ask this. But like, you've spoken a lot about letting users know when AI is being used, and that's kind of in contrast with AI just being used in the background. I'm curious, like, whether AI-powered products are obviously a hook for customers at the moment. Like Spotify's AI DJ, for example, is cool. There's an AI DJ, sure. Like, is that sustainable in terms of a hook for customers? Like, maybe according to regulations, we're going to have to tell customers when it's AI and when it's not. But will customers care about that in the long term? Will it draw them to products? Or is that like a fad?
My view is that depends on what product and depends on what area. Sometimes customers, and it will also evolve. To me, the general public's opinion and how much of the AI backworking they need to know will also be evolving, right? Like the more we get used to it, the more we're not gonna want to care what's in the background. But there will always be areas where we have to care a little bit more. Areas like human resources, people's jobs, or like finance. A lot of the bigger companies that they are heavily regulated, healthcare, right? All of those things, you will still have to work out the balance between trust, explainability, telling the user where things are, and then some things are becoming more accepted in our daily uses, having the search and recommendation system just tell us what movies to watch and what songs to listen to. We'll get more and more used to that. But it also evolves, I think, as we get more and more used to it. Even in the more regulated areas, we may have less of a need to go more into the depth. But I think it's dynamic, how much people need to know, and dynamic, and also depends on where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think there's kind of two distinct things there as well. You've got the hype part of it, which is, you know, marketing side of things, but then you're always going to need. You're always going to need the trust side of things, but you know, obviously over time that's going to evolve, and we're going to become more familiar with these tools and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of two-part, but I think the hype side of things might die down a bit. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm an annoying moderator with opinions. I think it just goes back to like people's mental models. At the moment, like we are like lacking new mental models to actually explain what this is. As soon as like these mental models will become more common, like they will be a commodity more and more, and then there's going to be a new things that is going to be exciting, and there's going to be the hook. But yeah, I think it just will take a while, depending also on like, is it regulated or not? Is it like a different environment? Is it useful or not? But yeah, it will take a while for us to have mental models, and that they will become common. There is a question in the back, and just wait a moment before you ask your question for Imogen to reach you.
Thanks. Currently, it feels as if the pace at which AI is, or sort of what we're calling AI, is moving faster than products can be developed to leverage the value of AI. And it feels like it's gonna keep moving faster and faster, because we're not even talking about products that incorporate planning yet, and sort of like, you know, sort of stateful memory and things like that. How do you think about developing products in an environment where the technology, it's like in the past, the technology was sort of like, it's the technology, it is what it is, and you have time to kind of marinate, experiment, and iterate and put stuff out. Now it feels as if the technology is moving faster than our ability to work with it. How do you begin to conceptualize new products without it feeling like you're in cloud cuckoo land, but knowing that the technology is moving at a pace that you actually will be able to deliver these things potentially in the future at some point?
I mean, my belief is that the constant behind all of this is the LLM, which is only, you know, as you say, it is moving pretty fast. It does seem to have stabilized a little bit in terms of the releases that we're seeing. As I've mentioned a number of times, I think like the integration principles or design patterns that we're using when we're building products on top of it isn't necessarily going to change a huge amount. I think there are fundamental techniques that we can use to integrate and plug into the LLM's reasoning ability or the LLM's generative or summarization ability. There are a few different techniques that I think, although they're not well established at this point, you can probably find quite a few blog posts on them. I think those will remain relatively constant right now, but you know, I may well be wrong.
Yeah. Maybe I have two perspectives on this. One is, it may appear that the technology is moving way faster than we can catch up to. But it's also, take LLMs, for example, right? Like, since it's being brought to the general public's attention with what OpenAI did with ChatGPT sometime this year, and to now, there's been big developments. If you really think about it, LLM isn't that new. Isn't that new either. It's been around for a little bit. There are people who have been working with it, like even my company, our teams have been working with it, though not in an exactly generative manner, but we've been working with the fine-tuning for a couple years now. So there's almost, even though you won't be able to catch up to the newest developments, if you really are interested to solve it from what can we do to prep for a technology perspective, there are things being developed. Things are being developed, right? It's not going to be there in a day. So there are always signs. There are things that people are aware of. So almost benefits companies to have a little bit of their, if you're big enough, in my opinion, to be able to afford that, to benefit the company to have a little bit of your workforces working on the future plan, future thinking, keeping up with the latest technologies, even before they have become so aware to the public, so that you prepare for things. But another one, to echo Henry's point, is that the way you build your product don't necessarily have to change, right? It starts with why. It starts with the problems you're trying to solve. So technologies change, your use cases don't, and the way you understand your users' pain points and you design the best solutions sort of don't. Like, if you focus on the problem and you know that these are the problems you need to solve, maybe with the newest technology, it will change your solution. But if you maintain your agility, keep up to date with things, but at the same time, start with the why, start with the problem. That's one of the ways that can help you stay a little bit more grounded and amidst all the technology changes, because that's not going to slow down either. We're all aware of that.
We have time for another question? No. Sorry, it's Imogen's fault. But come and grab us during the break. And thank you, everybody, for the great questions, for you and Henry. And see you soon. And on to the next panel in a few minutes.
With many companies, there's this sort of like cultural change which is needed to sort of adopt a product mindset. And the next panel is going to be all about that. So Fiona McLaren is going to be hosting the panel. Fiona is a product director at Plains, and the panel is called Transforming to a Product Culture. So over to you, Fiona.
Come with me. I also feel like if I had known both your photos were so nice and professional, I might not have picked hanging out with my dog. But there we go. So yeah, so as Ryan said, like, this panel is really about, like, what is it like to transform a business to be more product-led from the inside? And I guess this is interesting because I have spent like the last 10 years working in product agencies with lots of businesses that are huge in some way. So whether it's an airline, a financial institution, publishing, they all have different issues to deal with, right? So it can be regulation, it could be organizational constraints, it could be operational things that they have to contend with, or just like legacy technology and not knowing how to put the processes in place to make things happen. Which is why I'm really excited to have both of you here, because I'm hoping we can get some insight on to like what it's like from the inside. So Max is from Pizza Hut Digital, and Liz just has an extraordinary array of product experience. So I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourselves. But I wonder if you can just kick off with, a bit of an introduction, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in kind of traditional or legacy businesses?
Yep, so I'm Liz Clow. I've been working in product for a long time, and I've had the joy, I suppose, to work both in really large enterprise companies like the BBC and Groupon, News UK, but then also more recently in startups and scale-ups as well, such as Memo most recently, where I was CPO, iTech Media as well. So I love product and love working in different sectors, generally on the B2C side. And in terms of what the biggest challenges are, I think really when we think about becoming product-led, so much of it is mindset and organizational change. So in non-digital companies, just the way that large companies are set up and being very almost siloed with different organization structures and goals, very much aligned to those structures, starts to become a real challenge. And I think when you think about that, thinking about that mindset shift, it is about how do we break down some of that and how do we start to work towards the same thing and the same end goals. That starts to be the thing. So it's partly mindset. The other thing I think is starting to think about what are the outcomes we're trying to bring to a company. So rather than thinking about what are the features we're going to build into this product, starting to think actually about what are the business outcomes, what are the outcomes we want for our customers, and starting to shift from a feature mindset to a more of an outcome-based mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And like what that kind of shift, how do you think about that shift from kind of feature to outcome?
Really bringing data to the heart of it, having shared goals across cross-functional teams, but also thinking about putting the customer and putting data and insight at the heart of that decision making, so that and empowering people to be able to have that decision. So rather than all the ideas coming from the top of an organization, to actually empower your teams to get out and speak to customers, to get really, really good at understanding and analyzing data, and really focused on goals rather than things that somebody might think is a great idea, but actually may or may not change the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And Max, I know you like have this added challenge, right, of working with franchise businesses as a kind of additional customer. Is that right? And like, what challenges do you face in doing that?
Sure. So to start off, just a little bit of introduction. So my name is Max. I've been in the product game for 10 years now. I started out as an integration engineer and then joined a small startup which crashed and burned after 8 months. And then I worked as a senior product manager at Shopee, which is a huge e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia. And right now I'm a senior product manager at Pizza Hut Digital. Speaking of challenges, I think if anybody who ever walk into the F&B infrastructure business, their foundation is huge. Their operational cost and operational capital and process and number of people that involved in this just huge. So at the same time, that's mean digitalizing is a big question for them. And because of the nature of how they set up their business, it's just hard for them to digitalize and go back and try to kind of change all these processes now and onboard new people and bring in data into their conversations. Also, their mindset around product offering is entirely different to a digital centralized business, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you have the added complication of having to integrate with like points of sale as well?
I think that is every single market that we go through, we have to have that conversation. Every single management we have to go through, we have to have that conversation of whether our platform have the capabilities to integrate into their POS system or not. So our platform at the same time, not just have to, because we're building one single platform, we want to keep it lean and scalable. So we want to be able to solve different business challenge, but at the same time flexible enough to connect natively and easily with all different systems that was helping and servicing their business as well. This sometimes creates challenge in terms of just legacy system being outdated. There are some POS system that doesn't have an API, for example. What do you do there? There's a system who doesn't have a data warehouse. What do you do there? So there's just multiple variant questions, really.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to like the complexity of like working in international businesses with hundreds of locations, thousands of locations, and all of that legacy technology where you're just kind of like problem after problem in some ways prevents you sometimes from getting the product that you really want to get to market.
Sure.
So I guess my next question would be like, what are some of the ways in which you have been able to kind of navigate all these challenges we have spoken about, whether it's technology or mindset or understanding?
I think, as an example, when we start engaging the conversation of onboarding these franchisees onto our platform, the first thing we did was we beef up their data pipeline. So we go into their system, we understand how they're doing, how they operate their business, where do they get these data from? How do they make decisions? What were their pain points? It's just the natural of the franchisee business is that they are so big and they are very capital heavy, where they pour a lot of money into marketing and sales. So they do know how to get their customers at the door, but then once the customer inside their house, customer bounce between different touch points and not able to get the clear journey to check out in terms of digital. So that's where we come in. I think internally we call it as a war room strategy. We beef up their data, we get their insights, and then we draw out a plan in terms of our feature catalog. And we say, this is a mutual goal that through the onboarding process, we want you guys to get through. And we instill the product-led mindset into that conversation. So we broadcast that plan, and then we get buy-in from different departments inside their company. So that would typically include things like inventory, merchandising, sales and marketing, and etc. So once we get them buy-in, we go back to our digital side and we talk to our team and we go back to the war room and say, okay, here's the data we have, here's the risk and blockers that we have been able to identify based on the conversation we have with them, and this is what we're going to do, this is the plan that we have identified out based on that conversation, and kind of attack and refine our plan really with our own internal team. Now that both teams on both sides are aligned and set a baseline in terms of expectation, communication, process, and output, we then go back and attack our roadmap really by setting up a series of CRO and UXR tests to just validate every single step during that journey. And then we share those results with both internal and external team. This allows a transparency in terms of communication and risk when on board a big franchise to a new to a new platform, which helps the franchisee kind of I guess set a realistic expectation of what's going to happen when they are onboarded.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think a lot of that, right, is you're talking about really about speaking to those people in their own language, but bringing in some of that kind of product thinking and ways of working. And I know, Liz, like you have strong opinions on kind of alignment and how you take people on a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just adding on what Max was saying, I completely agree. I often say to product managers, one of the things we can really differentiate ourselves around is by bringing data into the conversation and being, known for the one that, starts to bring something different, to bring some data, to bring some insight. And so just get started on that and start to have conversations by sharing what you're learning, sharing kind of insight that you're picking up, and so to really get started with that, and as I say, just bring that data. But I think when there is real resistance, I've worked in some environments where there has been resistance to change, and people, not everybody can understand. If you don't work in product and you don't think in this way, and you've worked in more kind of traditional ways, you perhaps haven't had the opportunity to think in this way. So, one of the larger organisations I worked in, there was one of the leadership team who was really frustrated by what they saw as a perceived lack of progress or speed. And I just really over-indexed on working with that person really closely, starting to share frustration, listen to their frustration and understand it, and really start to change the language that we were talking about us all being in it together. It was, around our shared goals, around trying to change things for the customer and ultimately for the business together. And so, I think that relationship management's really important, encouraging teams to really analyse and look for data. And actually, that's one piece in some of the product teams that I've led, is ensuring that actually there is the skill set there within the product management function to be able to do that and make sure that data literacy is at the level it really needs to be. So I think just bringing the relationships, bringing data, and maybe also solving it through other ways as well. Just encouraging, giving a team, pulling a team together, getting a cross-functional team together on a small scale and giving them a problem I think we kind of referred to that in one of the earlier chats. Just get them started, get them, give them a problem to solve, and great minds working together. You just start to show and storytell around the company, what we're learning and some of the successes and learnings we've had along the way.
Yeah, because I think it's so interesting, right? Because you're always thinking about aligning at so many different levels in a big organization as well. So, like, you might be telling, I would assume, like, one story to your senior stakeholders to get them to agree, like, this is the outcome that we want to get to, but also trying to give the team the autonomy, I guess, to be able to go and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't mean, autonomy doesn't mean that the team's just running off in their own direction and doing their own thing. It's all got to align back to where the business is trying to go and the vision and the mission of the organisation. So connecting those things is often the challenge of a product leader to kind of really bring that connection and make sure that what we're working on is aligned to the overarching strategy.
And I think it's really interesting that both of you, I think, have already spoken about, and maybe we all know this as well, that yes, there are like product challenges, like legacy technology, that are hard to solve, but like you can make a plan for it, or say, actually, we can't do that. But actually, a lot of it, I believe as well, really comes down to kind of your people and culture and human skills. And so I guess, and we can start with you, Liz, like how do you, and you've spoken about it a bit already, but like how do you think about like developing that great product culture, I guess within your team and beyond?
I suppose it's building on some of the things that we've already touched on, making sure that we're sharing, so cross-company, regardless of whether somebody sits in marketing or product or sales, starting that conversation about data, sharing it, getting people working together to talk about some of the opportunities that they're identifying and things like that. So really, I think when I think about what a product culture is and being product-led, it is very much about those things. It's about that cross-collaboration. So how, finding people who've got, similar views or ideas and just starting to create that culture of openness, that culture of shared goals, and collaboration. So, again, I kind of worked in a business a while ago where, trying to break down barriers about who could actually speak to customers was one of the challenges. And, I always remember somebody saying, well, hang on a moment, but marketing owns the customer. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, this is awkward, that somebody owns the customer. And actually, from a product point of view, it'd be really, really helpful if we engaged with talking to customers and hey, wouldn't it be amazing if what you're finding out in marketing and what we're discovering in product, we kind of connected over that and started that dialogue and got other people involved in bringing their insights to the table as well. So, I think it's some of those things around culture is making sure that, those dots are being connected, that the environment is being created for that as well. And on top of that is, and I won't go off on too much of a tangent, but making sure that the people there, that, having a diverse culture in every sense of the word and bringing people with different experiences, people who've been exposed to different businesses and different products, ultimately, starts to create an environment where, you build upon each other and bring different strengths to the table.
Yeah, Max, what about you? And like, how do you, I guess, also working in kind of an innovation team, right? Like, how do you show the value of what you're doing to the wider business and to your users?
I think for us, so our team is based in 3 different countries and 3 different time zones. So communication is key, really. First of all, you have to have a culture to be able to set up a product culture, if you will. So what we did was that we tried to set up our communication to be very clear and concise, especially from leaderships. That also means leadership doesn't have to speak all the time. Leadership needs to speak when they need to speak. And because leadership, sometimes if they over-communicate, they would just create confusion for the rest of the team. And given that all of our team are working remotely, and we probably get notification from our phone, from our laptop, 1,000,000 times a day or 1,000 times a day probably. So keeping communication clean and concise and clear and serve the right purpose, probably the first thing that we should do. And then the second thing for us is to standardize our data pipeline across the team and make sure that that data pipeline is there to feed the right data for the right team to serve the right goal. That actually helped us immensely because internally there's different team operating under different priority with different goals. So then having one clear view of where the data is coming from, what's the story is it telling us, is actually help us immensely. And then at that point, once we get to that point, then we can start about product culture. Once we got that into everyone, we set up a no-blame culture that allows everyone to be able to try something and get buy-in from everyone and able to try that together. And what we also saw was that this kind of mindset also integrate over to the franchisee who have not been a digitalized-oriented business. And this has also helped us with just working with them much smoother and speaking the same language, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of that is really interesting, right? Because I think we see so much, or I have seen, especially as an agency, right? You get to see the projects that have typically come from someone very senior being like, I think this is a great idea. Mm-hmm. And you do see in lots of big businesses that those kind of vanity, that's a bit unfair. that those projects that have come from someone with some sense of power and budget will go ahead no matter what. But actually, I think a great product culture and enabling us to do the things that like CJ's panel were talking about is finding ways to bring stuff up from the bottom. Again, that sounds horrible.
Definitely. Because we also, one of the great things I love working at Pizza Hut Digital is that CEO or leadership come to us and say, we need to do this. And the first thing we always say is why? Mm-hmm. What do you want? And why do you want this? Give us some context. Give us some data behind. Give us that decision-making process that you went through, that we able to collaborate and innovate on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, as product people, right, that's what we want to understand. Is like, why would we do this thing? Is it solving a real problem? Yeah. Are people going to pay for it? Is it worth doing? Is it worth that investment?
And I think that's why having things like shared goals and really clear goals to align people around what are we actually trying to do this quarter or this year, so that, because ideas can come from anywhere, and the culture should be that ideas can come from anywhere, but whether it's whatever position somebody holds in the organization, does it align to the goal that we've got right now, or actually is it going to distract us from that? And if it's going to distract us, is it such a big thing that we should stop what we're doing over here and completely pivot 360?
Yeah, and I guess it's those goals, right? Like you were saying, Liz, I think at the beginning, like it's often silos can be such a challenge, but it's that kind of overarching, this is what we're trying to achieve. Yeah. That enables everyone to move in the same way. Yeah. Just do the watch check. I will ask my final question. I feel like we could actually end up chatting for quite a long time. But I guess if as people in this room that are facing some of the challenges that have been spoken about, or like are stuck in a business where they're thinking, actually, this is really hard, what are some of the like easy, not necessarily easy, but the best kind of advice or tips you could give them?
Yes?
I'll go.
Let's go.
Happy to go first.
Yeah.
I mean, just get started. Just give it a go. Try something different. Whether that's, get a small team together and get them focused on a problem, give them a goal and see what happens and report it back, or just start talking to customers. Back to CJ's panel earlier, it was, rather than every bug that gets raised, solving it, absolutely no, push back and say no sometimes, and say, actually, no, we're not going to solve that bug that, Mr. CEO has found, because actually, it's not necessarily, if we put our efforts into that, then that takes us away from this, which we believe is a bigger opportunity. So, just get started, try something different, and, there's no one way of doing it. The context of where you work is really important, but actually just, start small and see if you can get some traction, get some, if you can find allies on the leadership team that understand this way of thinking, then, that's always good to find somebody, good to find a friend that you can get their support from as well.
Or occasionally cry on.
Yeah.
For me is to get your data in place. Your team will thank you so much for it. Having data in place and having data visibility into what's going on inside your organizations actually helps remove so many conversations and so many unnecessary meetings and just confusions and just double checks and confirmations and testing. Just it's the first thing that I think a lot of organizations tend to pour into operations and getting sales in place, but not having data in place actually means you don't know sometimes you just don't know what's going on inside your house, and it's dangerous. So yeah, get your data pipeline and get that dashboard visible to everyone, and make sure that data serves the right audience, because different teams would have different goals and different orientations as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a danger, right? Like if you start experimenting, but
and
you
using the wrong data.
Yeah, if you don't have the data,
the wrong assumption.
You're just
for sure
stuck. This has been fantastic. Again, I could ask a lot more questions, but I will ask if anyone else has any questions. That hand was first. Sorry for calling you that hand. It's quite dark.
That's fine. I've been called worse. Liz and Max, you've both worked at big companies. You've both worked at small companies or startups. I think everyone's very quick to say what big companies can learn from startups. Is there anything that startups can learn from big companies?
Oh, that's a really great question. Could startups learn from big companies? I think in larger companies, in my experience, there is a little bit more discipline about how you're going to spend your budget and the problems you're going to work on. I think what I've seen, and I can only share what I've seen through my lens, is that sometimes there's a lot of busy work that happens in startups, but it's not necessarily always grounded in outcomes. And I think maybe there's a sense of structure, a sense of focus, I guess. You have to be really focused in a big company because your budget can only stretch so far and you can only focus on so many initiatives. And I think in the startups, getting some level of focus so that you're focused on outcomes, not just output, would be one of the things I think of.
To answer that really, I was in a small startup where I basically did partner management, project management, product management, business analyst, data analyst, and all of that together. And then I talked to a lot of startups where they tend to move really fast, which is good, and it's just the nature of a startup comparing to a corporate company. But then I think another thing startups should also focus on is having functional satellite teams or small functional tools that support CEO or product making decisions. And I don't want to brag on about data again, but at least have these functional tools. It doesn't matter if it's free, at least it serves some purpose to help you make decisions rather than chime that on to one single person. Because I think the biggest difference between startup and corporate is just around the resource of how much you guys can spend. And for startup, having these different tools that can collaborate with each other and help people make decisions better, it's going to help them immensely, really.
Cool, there was another hand. There you go, you found it.
Hiya. I was just sat here wondering, of course, there's a lot of people in this room. I recruit designers, specifically product designers, and they often speak about being design-led. And I wonder, is there a room of marketers somewhere going, we should be marketing-led? How do you think about culture when you want to be product-led, designers want to be design-led? how does that all work internally when you're communicating together? Is there like a one goal that you strive for? Is it product-led? Is it design-led? What's the...
Yeah, I think that, you know, where product and design come together is a really sweet spot, and there's so many great, you know, great perspectives from both being product-led and design-led, and there's so much overlap in between. And I think, you know, the best environments I've worked in and the best products are where product and design really come together and take the best of those methodologies and the best of that experience and apply it in the context that you're in. So I think, although there's definitely friction sometimes between product and design, I think there's also a lot of overlap and synergy. And when you get product managers and designers working closely, I think, you know, if the biggest disagreement is over, you know, should we be more design-led or more product-led, I think that's a good space to be in, because actually there's a lot of overlap between those positions, and, you know, they're probably closer together than perhaps sometimes the group of marketeers that are sitting in a room, and there's probably more we could do there to bring those groups together.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think it really depends on your domain of your product. Let's say if you are in a marketing product company domain, then that would be an entirely different question. Same go for companies like Figma or Canvas or Miro, who tend to have a huge product designer team with not many product managers on the spot, apparently. And yeah, it really depends on your context. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of time people also misunderstanding product-led. Product-led doesn't mean product people leading everyone. Product-led meaning allowing your product to show true value to your customers and able to translate your value via your product to the customers. So sales if we are a platform that is helping Pizza Hut franchisee selling pizza, essentially that's mean we are in a B2B2C business. And product-led in our organization meaning using our platform to onboard new franchisee, using our platform to attract new customer for the franchisee, using our platform to build loyalty, build CRM and all that for the franchisee. Sorry. So it's really a question of domain and context of how you build out your team and where's the key areas, the key value, the unique proposition that bring your customer to your product.
Yeah, I would also say it's like, I think as product people, I think when we say product-led, we also always mean multidisciplinary and collaborative, and that it's doing the right thing for the product at any one time, not I have to be in charge. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's create a bottleneck situation, really.
Yeah. No, we're done. I was going to say, are there any more questions? But apparently not. Thank you both so much. This has been great. And thank you all of you. And I think Ryan is going to say some more things.